Hello guys. So today I'm gonna be actually introducing you to the first video of the Metaphysics series. I know I'm breaking off for the epistemology series for right now, but we will get back onto it shortly. I just want to get deeper into what metaphysics really is, right? So first off, right off the bat, is that metaphysics is the study of being or existence, or at least that's the general definition. But Aristotle defined it as being as such and first causes, right? And things that don't change, the study of things that don't change. The subject of metaphysics includes the study of being as such, examination of first causes, and exploration of unchanging entities. Yeah, that kind of sounds repetitive, but whatever. So ontology and metaphysics, what are the differences? If you've never heard of ontology is the study of what actually exists in reality. And so it's a sub-branch of metaphysics, right? And so metaphysics is more broad in describing how reality works and focus on the nature of reality. But please note that ontology is still metaphysics though. So for example, in ontology, um when we say something ontologically exists, it means that there is some external reality to it. Like for example, in Immanuel Kant's philosophy, time and space do not have an external ontology, right? They're not a thing in themselves. So they don't exist ontologically, right? And so that's the key distinction. So this is Christian Wolff's classification, and so Wolff introduced the division within metaphysics. So general metaphysics or ontology is focused on being as such, and special metaphysics is examining specific categories like souls and material bodies as seen in rational psychology and natural theology. If you do not know what natural theology is, we will get into that later. We'll get into Orthodox Christian Trinitarianism and metaphysics and Catholicism. And so that will be a really great video later on. And so Wolff's categorization suggested that each category, for example, souls, has its own mode of being. So natural theology, if you really want to know about it for right now, natural theology just believes that we can know certain things about God from natural reason, right? Human reason, right? So you could see an example of this in Thomas Aquinas, right? Because the whole Catholic, actually I can't say the whole Catholic because I know some people might deny it, but generally Catholicism is from Thomas Aquinas epistemology, and Thomas Aquinas epistemology is empiricistic, right? And he is basically a natural theologian because he starts from the peripatetic axiom. And so we will get into that later on. And so being as such, the idea of being or existence as a fundamental concept has led to diverse metaphysical theses throughout history, and some notable positions include, which I got this from the Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It is a really great website if you just really want to learn specific topics. I mean, a lot of it's on there, right? And so Parmenides claimed that being is, not being is not. Avicenna's essence precedes existence, paraphrase, while the new existentialist philosophers would disagree with that, like Jean-Paul Sartre, if I remember that's his name. St. Elsum's view is that existence in reality is greater than existence in understanding alone. So you can really search up his argument for God, right? And then Descartes' idea is that existence is a perfection. Kant's thesis is that being is a logical, not a real predicate, right? And so Kant was basically, I think he was answering he was objecting to St. Elsum's argument, saying that existence is not a predicate, right? And so Hegel's view of being as the most barren and abstract of all categories. Frege's position is that affirmation of existence is nothing but the denial of the number zero. Bertrand Russell's stance is that universals do not exist but subsist or have being. And Quine's claim that to be is to be the value of a bound variable. McDaniel's idea is that an object's degree of being is proportionate to the naturalness of its mode of existence. And so, substance. The definition of substance, right? So some entities exist in their own right, rather than being dependent on other things like a smile or a hole. Such independent entities are called substances. Aristotle's term, protai, ousia, or primary beings. I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. Characteristics of substance. So the characteristics of substance include, they are the subjects of predication. And so substances can be described, but but are not themselves descriptions, right? They are not universals. And so they are containment of accidents. Substances contain qualities or accidents but are not themselves contained in other things. For example, Socrates' wisdom or smile inheres in him, but Socrates does not inhere in another. So, and there's a determinate identity for substances. Substances have a stable, identifiable essence that persists over time, allowing for questions of numerical identity across time and counterfactual existence. For example, would Socrates exist in a different possible world? And modality. You can actually read a lot of books like Saul Kripke's books. He really just like is a I think he's considered one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. People consider him the greatest, but I don't consider him. I'm sorry. I consider probably Hume, right? And so, modality basics. Necessity versus contingency. There's a distinction between propositions that must be true, for example, mathematical truths, and those that might have been false. For example, Paris is the capital of France. And so, and there is medieval and modern modal distinctions. Medieval philosophers introduced terms for necessity and contingency called modality. Modern philosophers still explore these, but they redefine them with tools and distinctions. So there's two types of modality that you gotta know, and so it's modality de dicto, and this is focused on propositions mainly, and so it concerns the truth or falsity of propositions, largely treated within model logic, and in modality de re, which is concerned with things, concerns properties or the existence of objects themselves. This is a metaphysical topic focused on real, possibly changing entities. So if you look at some of the arguments for God, modality there is actually used, right? So there's an argument for God from contingency and necessity. It's like every being is contingent, but God isn't, and God is necessary, right? And we'll look into that more later on. And modality there in existence. So contingent beings are beings that might not have existed, right? Humans like Sally, humans like me, right? And necessary beings are beings that could not have failed to exist, such as certain philosophical or religious conceptions of God, as I've explained. Note that a lot of the medieval scholastic arguments for God that we see from Aquinas, Anselm, and if you look at Islamic scholars too, like Ibn Sina, really they're not really proving a specific God. Moreover, they're just really proving a generic God. Um, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's really just an argument for God. And if you really want to prove the existence of, let's say, a Christian God, then you would have to get into more metaphysics or and actually prove why the Christian God is necessary, right? So it's not just a generic proof for one specific God. It could be used for a lot, right? It's like you can use it for the proof of God in Islam, right? And so we see that in natural theology. And so this is essential versus accidental properties. So accidental properties are a being that could lack, right? So Sally speaks English, but she might have spoken French, right? And so essential properties are properties a being must have to exist, right? For example, possibly not being a poached egg for a human being. Essential properties remain controversial and depend on metaphysical perspectives. For example, physicalism versus dualism. And so there's also debates within reality of space and time. So there's an essential question whether space and time are real or merely phenomena. And so Leibniz says that space and time as well-founded phenomena rather than components of reality as perceived by God. And Kant said space and time are forms of human intuition, not attributes of things as they are in themselves. So this is in his Transcendental Philosophy. Space and time are the preconditions for experience itself. It is what makes experience intelligible, and this is actually a response to David Hume. Well, actually, space and time are not, but the causation, because he moves causation into the human mind as an intuition, right? And so McTaggart said that space and time are unreal. And so relation to first causes and universals. So first causes are thought to be internal and non-local, as you can see in Aristotelian metaphysics, right? And so, for example, God as eternal and omnipresent. Eternality, God as either everlasting or outside of time. Omnipresence, God as causally present in all regions of space without being spatially localized, right? And so universals in space and time. Ante-res universals. They exist outside space and time but are vicariously present where instances occur. For example, whiteness is present wherever there are right things, and rebus universals, immanent universals that are wholly present at each location. They instantiate. So, example, whiteness is wholly present wherever it appears. Free will versus determinism. So determinism basically says that all future states are determined by past states and laws, and it implies only one possible future. And so determinism says that all possible events are fully determined by material causes. Or a short definition could be saying that every action is determined. There you go. Free will is thus impossible under this position because determinism presumes that all determinism presumes that all causes and effects can eventually be known, so that the whole cosmos can be understood as a complex game of dominoes. This is determinism in its simplest form. Sorry, I kind of stuttered there for a moment, but basically, free will is impossible under determinism, right? Because determinism says that if everything is already determined from prior causes, and your action is already determined, you are not necessarily free. So your parents' love for you is not free, and unfortunately, that's sad, in my opinion, right? Just to let you know, I'm not a determinist. So causal determinism is just another name for determinism. It's in its simplest form. You might hear that. Don't get it confused. And so nomological determinism is mainly another term for causal determinism. It says that past and present dictate the future by unchangeable natural law. The word nomo comes from the Greek pneuma, which is sometimes translated as law. This is also called physical determinism. And necessitarianism is a metaphysical theory that denies all possibility, right? There are no possibilities. Everything has been fixed from the start of the cosmos because of the immutability of the natural law. So everything is necessary, right? You, me, existing, this world is necessary. It could not have been different. That is the main point of necessitarianism. Or necessitarianism. I keep pronouncing it wrong. So the free will debate, the other side is libertarianism and compatibilism, which we will get more into. Like, we'll get into the actual arguments for determinism. If you read Galen Strawson, he actually has a decent argument. I actually like his argument a little bit. Nothing can be causa sui, right? And we'll also look into free will and compatibilism arguments. And I guess we'll go into a little bit of modality, but not too much modal logic, because I don't like modal logic that much. But I do like modal logic in the sense that it's used for good arguments, right? Like, if you see transcendental argument, the transcendental argument for God is using the S5, model S5 system, right? And so compatibilism says that free will is compatible with determinism, right? And libertarianism says there is free will, but unfortunately it is not compatible with determinism. And so this is the total list of issues in metaphysics. We will be discussing more, possibly more than this list, but this is just some of the issues, right? So ontology, modality, identity, Mariology. Mariology will discuss like objects, right? If you hear about Mariological nihilism, it's gonna be like this keyboard in front of me is not really a keyboard. It's just a bunch of molecules that are shaped up and formed to look like a keyboard, but really there is no keyboard. So if you're a materialist plus a if you combine materialism with Mariological nihilism, you pretty much don't exist. Sorry. And then you got personal identity. And so identity and personal identity is different because I believe, identity focuses on metaphysical object identity, which concerns Leibniz's law of indiscernibles, right? Yeah, I remember that. And so 6 is the nature and reality of time and space. We'll get into what Kant says about that, Isaac Newton and Leibniz's debate. But Leibniz versus Newton on whether space is absolute or relative, right? 7 is cause and effect. We'll look into the argument from Hume, whether we can know cause and effect relationships, right? And then 8, universals and properties, which we'll get into Platonic metaphysics and Aristotle's critique. And maybe we'll look into St. Augustine's use of Neoplatonism within his philosophy to synthesize Christianity with Neoplatonism. The One, the Nous, or the Divine Mind, if I remember, that's what it's called. If you really want to know about that, really, he combines Neoplatonism with Christianity and says that God governs these universals or forms, right? And 9, oh, and the Son as the logos or the wisdom of the Father. And so 9 is free will and determinism, which we will discuss later on. 10 is naturalism. Naturalism, materialism, physicalism, they're interrelated, essentially. And we'll discuss that too. 11, mind-body problem. Substance dualism versus materialism versus, yeah, I think those are the two positions. And then 12, substance, right? And so we'll look into, actually that's just the same thing, right? Materialism, there's one substance, right? Monism, dualism, and yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for watching, guys.